Welcome to the National Book Festival. My name is Rahman Alam. I'm an editor at the New York Times, and it is such a pleasure to be here. I was saying to one of the women working the event that I've been to a lot of book festivals, and I expected something really sedate and quiet with like a few old ladies with tote bags walking down the hall, and it's like Black Friday out there, which is testament to what kind of a literary city Washington, D.C. is. And so I'm really happy to be here, and it's really a pleasure to share the stage with Sujatha Gidla, who has written a beautiful book called Ants Among Elephants, An Untouchable Family and the Making of Modern India. I have a million questions for Sujatha, and I'm sure that you will as well. So about 15 minutes before we wrap up, I'll open it up to questions from the audience. But we're going to begin by listening to Sujatha read briefly from her book, and then I'm going to drive her crazy with a million questions. So please.
Hi, everybody. So the book is Ants Among Elephants. This is my family biography that intersects with the, you could say, biography of India, independent India. And I want to start with this section that describes my uncle's wedding. He was 25, 24 years old, and the wedding is taking place in a village. And this is about the preparation of the wedding feast. In fact, somebody actually, suggested that I send this excerpt to Food and Wine.
You should. Oh, is this about the pig?
Yeah.
Yes, you should. You should.
And they would have been like really horrified. So, all right. On the morning of the wedding, Manjula was woken by loud cries from the alley next to her uncle Gollaya's house in Sankarpadu. She sat up in fright and started praying, "Oh, Deva, Jesus, Lord, save us." A cousin of hers sitting nearby put her sorry end to her mouth to hide her smile. "What, Papa? No need to be scared. They're just chasing the pig." When Prasanna Rao announced his son's wedding to the village, everyone started drooling at the thought of the pig. A wedding in an untouchable colony is a festival, and at the center of the festival is the feast. And at the center of the feast is the pig. As soon as a match is fixed, both the bride's house and the groom's house get hold of a piglet, either by buying one in an untouchable market or catching a stray. For weeks, the families raise their pig with great care. A wedding pig is no ordinary pig. It must be treated with respect. No one is allowed to talk harshly to it, even if it should get in the way. "Hey, watch your mouth. That's the wedding pig." The families feed it as well as they can, giving it starch water left after rice is cooked to drink, or sometimes even cattle fodder. Most untouchable families don't have that kind of food to spare. And the best thing about a pig is that it can feed itself. The staple for pigs in India is what's delicately called malinam, filth. They eat human shit. If the wedding family is too poor to feed their pig, it's not a big deal. The pig simply goes around the village eating shit and gets just as fat. Untouchables will often marvel. Shit it may eat, but a pig's meat is the sweetest meat of all. But the announcement of Satyam's wedding meant more than just the prospect of pig. Prasanna Rao had risen above the condition of all those he had left behind in Sankarpadu. He was a teacher, not a farmhand. He had lived in cities and towns. He interacted with caste people, with other educated people, people with jobs. In the eyes of the villagers, he was wealthy. He owned 4.5 acres of land. His son was the first ever college-going man from the village. And now that eldest and favorite son was getting married, there would be a lot of pork at this feast. Prasanna Rao, it was said, might even get a pig of that exotic new breed. Only a year or two earlier, a new breed of pig had arrived in the country. They're known as Sima Pandulu, European pigs. They come from Russia. Some call them red pigs because their skin is pink and hairless and smooth. They're raised on farms in pens, not let loose in the streets. They're fed a calibrated diet and grow many times fatter and larger than Indian pigs. In fact, they seem to have nothing in common with the black, hairy, filthy native pigs. But whenever anyone tries to raise one of these foreign pigs on his own, pretty soon it loses its caste and turns into an ordinary Indian pig. Its pink turning to black, its fat shrinking away as it runs through the streets, wallowing in sewers and swallowing the effluvium. Everyone in Sankarpadu looked forward to tasting a European pig at Prasan Rao's son's wedding. But Prasan Rao's son had other ideas. When the matter of the pig came up, it pained Satyam to realize that his relatives were so different from his caste friends. He had attended many of his friends' weddings while living in Gudivada, and except for Nancharaya, none of them had served meat. Meat is believed by Hindus to be impure. Brahmins, the purest caste, eat no meat at all, not even fish or eggs. Untouchables, being impure themselves, eat even carrion beef, the flesh of cows that drop dead by the roadside of age or disease, which, since cows are sacred and cannot be slaughtered, is the only kind of beef that falls to human consumption under Hindu law. Middle castes, except for merchant castes, eat meat but never beef, and it is inauspicious to serve any meat at all at births, funerals, or weddings. Satyam considered it uncultured and even barbaric to eat the flesh of a pig on any occasion. A pig, to a caste Hindu, is a symbol of filth. Untouchables are commonly associated with two creatures, the crow for its blackness and the pig for its foulness. When people assembled under the banyan tree to plan the feast, Satyam told them there would be no pig. The elders took the cigars out of their mouths. What? A wedding feast with no pig? Satyam replied, there won't be any meat. They couldn't believe their ears. The most fabulous wedding they would ever attend was turning out to be the worst one they ever heard of. They wanted nothing to do with it. Men, women, and children turned and went home disappointed. But Satyam was unmoved. Discussion in the village went on for several days. In the end, the elders came to Prasan Rao with a proposal. How about a pig for the village and hence for the having read people, that is the educated people, the educated ones? Satyam said, never. Prasan Rao took his son's side. He had stopped eating beef in Vizag when he had to hide his caste for the sake of being allowed to rent a room in the house of a caste Hindu family. And now the very thought of beef was revolting to him. He didn't mind pork himself, but he could understand how his son felt. Instead of a pig, he had bought sacks of vegetables, and from some kammas whose children he taught in Talaprolu, some strange upper caste flour-based foods, appadams and laddus. The villagers decided to boycott the wedding altogether. One thing saved the day. Neither Prasan Rao nor Satyam had a say in what the bride's family could or could not serve at their feast on the night of the wedding. Everyone knew Kutumbarao had already been raising a pig for the last few weeks. Whether Kutumbarao had bought his pig or caught it himself was not clear, but it was a black Indian pig. That was the pig the young men of the village were chasing on the morning of the wedding when they woke Manjula with their cries. Manjula went out to watch the agile young men armed with long, thick sticks and clenching cigars between their molars, running through the village, loincloths pulled tight over their crotches and between their buttocks, their bodies shiny with sweat. One carried a special net. The children of the village, 20, 30 of them, naked, dust-coated, wild-haired, runny-nosed, the girls among them also all naked, but for their snail shell anklets and the little silver or copper discs strung around their waists to preserve their modesty. They ran along the hunters. Everyone was screaming as loud as he or she could, and the pig was screeching even louder. Wild with fear, it whizzed past the huts like a cannonball, desperate to escape the murderous youths. A cloud of dust rose from beneath its hooves and the feet of the men right behind it. The pig is chased, instead of just being tied down and butchered to save its blood. The blood is what makes it tasty. The idea is to scare the pig with screams and cries and make it run for its life until it collapses from exhaustion. In Sankarpadu that morning, young women and girls admired the muscles rippling beneath the men's glistening brown skin as they wielded their sticks. The women's eyes ran all over the hunters' bodies, taking in the smalls of their backs, their thighs, their chests, their narrow waists, the lips that held their cigars. Each thought fondly of her own man. Each thought fondly how her own man ran faster than the rest, how he tackled the pig expertly to the ground. The men were aware the women were watching, and they tried their hardest to impress them. The pig ran and ran for half an hour until it could run no more and finally dropped to the ground. One hunter threw his special net over it, and the others raised their sticks and beat the animal half-conscious. They carried it to the center of the village and tied its snout shut with a rope. They tied its front legs to a pole and stood it up on its hind legs. The dazed pig looked up at the sky. As a piglet grows in size, its neck gets soon so fat that as long as it lives, it is never able to lift its head and look at the sky. But a wedding pig, in the last moments of its life, gazes skyward at last, for the first time and the last time. Untouchables will say of an untouchable man who has lived in poverty all his life, never having had a moment of happiness, but for a small respite at the end when his son gets a job and is finally able to take care of his parents. Veedu pandilanti vaadandi, chachpoye mundu akasanni chusadu. This fellow is like a pig. He saw the sky for the first time at the end of his life. On that wedding morning, the men responsible for preparing the pig gently roasted the still living pig and carried it to the bride's house. For lack of cutting board, they unhinged the front door and laid the pig on it. Two elders, Uncle Nallaya and cousin Abednego, were invited to do the honors and carve the pig. A few years before, a Brahmin in Gudivada who worshipped Gandhi had spread the principles of nonviolence among all and sundry, especially the cruel and crude untouchables. One day, he found himself in an untouchable colony where a wedding feast was taking place. Before the men could lay the pig on the door, the Brahmin pushed his way forward and laid himself down in the pig's place. He wept. How can anyone with a heart hurt this voiceless animal? Are you not human? Haven't you heard the teachings of our great spirit, Gandhi? He pleaded with the untouchables to cut himself up before they took a knife to that creation of God's. The youth in that colony, full drunk, pinned the Brahmin down and held a knife to his throat before their elders intervened. The Brahmin scurried off and never tried that again. Good thing he didn't stay to watch what they did next. If he had, he might have fainted. Manjula herself couldn't bear to watch as the wedding cook separated out the intestines, which would make a tasty sauté. Other special parts were carefully removed, the heart, the brain, and the liver. A curry made out of these is not meant for everyone. A portion of it is given to the pastor who performs the wedding, and the rest goes to the wedding families. For days, the pig would feed the whole colony. They'd make soup with its bones and curries out of its hooves and testicles. People would swear how divine it is to eat pork fry while drinking. Chicken is nothing, they'd say. But the affair of the pig is more than its taste. It's the circus of hunting it, the feats of the men, it's heroic, it's romantic, it's erotic. It's a metaphor, it's rhetoric. It is deeply philosophical, but these are all mere superstructures. At the base, it's economic. The cheapest meat for the cheapest man on earth. That's it.
I'm so happy that you read that section because I love that metaphor about the pig finally looking up at the sky right as it's about to die. I think that we should start at the beginning and just explain to an American audience what caste means. What is caste?
Okay, caste is a social institution. It's a social structure. I would say race in America is also a social institution, not based on biological differences between blacks and whites. I would say that in America, the race is a social structure because the fairest, the lightest skinned black man with the bluest eyes is also a black man if there is one drop of African blood in him. In that sense, caste is a social institution. Unlike race, there is no physical visual differences to tell one caste from the other. Because of that, the differences are imposed from outside. These are external differences imposed on these people. You cannot wear hair like we do. You cannot have the same clothes as we do. You cannot go to the same temples as we do. You cannot perform your weddings in the same way as we do. These are the external differences imposed on people to differentiate them, that these people are untouchable. So caste in India is, the society is divided into different castes. The top is Brahmins. They are the purest caste. So caste has both two things, occupation associated with it and purity pollution scale associated with it. The Brahmins at the top, they're priestly caste. They perform the priestly functions. They're the purest. And the second is Kshatriyas, that is the warrior caste. And the third is the Vaishyas, the merchant trader caste. And the fourth is a conglomeration of subcastes, each defined by its occupation. Potters is one caste, and carpenters are one caste, diggers are one caste, and even prostitution is a caste. It's by birth that you're a prostitute, not by your choosing, not by your circumstances, but because you're born in a prostitute family, you're a prostitute. And underneath all of these four castes, these are outcasts, they're untouchables. And so they have the filthiest occupations given to them, such as removing dead animals and carrying away human shit and handling dead bodies are these people's occupations. And there is nothing one can do to choose their caste, and there's nothing that can do to escape. You're born into a caste and you die in it. And that is the caste system, and it still persists.
But so you mentioned before that it's this sort of irrevocable, imposed structure. How can people define one another? Like, how can you tell that somebody is of a certain caste?
Yeah.
Like, what are the ways in which it's clear to one person exactly how to categorize another person? If it's not about skin color, like, what is it about?
So Ruman here is South Asian. I'm South Asian. Do you see any racial difference between us? Nothing. So, but you have to put these people apart, so that everybody can say these people are untouchables. So the first thing they do is they're not allowed to live inside villages. They have to live on the outskirts of the village. They come into the village only to perform services. So the fact that you're living there is one thing. And the second thing is that no interaction, in only a few decades ago, women in Kerala, the untouchable women, were not allowed to cover their breasts. They had to stand naked-breasted, naked chest in front of the landlords. And if they want to cover their breasts, they have to pay tax, which is very high, and it's hard for untouchables to, to be able to cover themselves. So it's the Indian missionaries that came there that fought against that system and finally won the right of untouchable women to cover their breasts. So this is one example of how you set apart these women. These women are not covering breasts, means that these are untouchables. These men are allowed only to wear only loincloth, which means that he's an untouchable. And he's wearing this hair cut in a very odd fashion. That means he's an untouchable. He's not allowed to wear footwear. That's an untouchable. And in one part of the country, you're supposed to hang a pot on your neck so that you cannot spit on the ground because other people walk on the ground and your spit is filthy, it's impure. So if you want to spit, you can only spit in this thing. And you have to tie a broom around your waist so that wherever you walk, you wipe and clean your steps behind you. And even now it exists, like a boy wanted to ride a horse and his father was able to buy a horse, but he was killed because it is not done that an untouchable could ride a horse. And you could get killed for wearing a watch. You could get killed for riding a bicycle. And recently, a pregnant woman was beaten to death because she dared to touch the trash can of a caste Hindu. And these are like all these differences which are not biologically visual are imposed from outside. Don't wear a watch, don't have a haircut, don't ride a horse, don't wear footwear. This is the way that people differentiate untouchables from caste Hindus.
I think that there's an assumption, at least there was for me, that this way of organizing society is very, very ancient. But in fact, in your book, you talk about your great-grandfather, who had been a sort of tribal person outside of an urban India, and this would have been quite a while ago now, but not centuries ago, and that in his clan there was no concept of caste,
yeah.
And it was not until the sort of urbanization of this rural Indian population that caste as an idea even took hold. So is it accurate to say that it's not like it's not an age-old idea. Yeah. It's not centuries and centuries old. It's weirdly a modern way of organizing things. And you talk about this book, the subtitle of this book is The Making of Modern India. And so I think that works in two ways, where you're talking about caste as a sort of structure that helped give rise to the India we know now, but you're also really talking about, in the section that Sujatha read, Manjula, the little girl, the young woman who has gone out to watch this erotic pig hunt, is her mother. And the man who is getting married is her uncle, Sacham, or SK?
Esme, sorry. Yeah, okay.
And it felt to me like the making of modern India was really something that he was a part of, because this was a man who was, as Sujatha has just said, from a caste of people for whom there was no expectation in life, that he would, like a pig, only see the sky upon reaching his death. Yeah. But he wholly rejected that and became a very significant political dissenter and sort of a guerrilla leader in a movement that's probably most associated with what we understand in this country as communism. So this would have been in the 50s, right? So can you talk a little bit about your uncle and when you were a child, did you understand that your uncle was this kind of freedom fighter, that he was a hero?
So my uncle was born an untouchable, and his family was very poor, and they were living in squalid conditions. But at that time, the British were ruling India, and the whole nationalist thing was, the struggle was, we're poor because the British are ruling us. We're poor because they're exploiting our resources. And so it got into his mind that, okay, if you get rid of the British, we will all live happily, like eat bread like the British people, live in bungalows and wipe your mouths with napkins and, that kind of stuff. So at 11, when he was 11 years old, there was a Quit India movement. It came in the context of World War II. World War II gave Gandhi a leverage. Look, the British will support you in the war if you give us independence. So it was somewhat militant, more militant than other struggles. And that struggle was what my 11-year-old uncle was attracted to, and he participated in it. And at 16, the independence came, and the very day the independence came, he saw so all these people came together as one, as united front to fight the British. But once the British left, these class lines, caste lines started showing up, And the very night of the independence, he saw that things didn't change for him on people like him. And the upper class, upper caste people, the independence is for them. For the lower caste, untouchables, by and large, India remained the same. So he was disillusioned with the independence movement and independence. But at that very time, there was a struggle going on in the neighboring state where the peasants, the poor peasants, were revolting against a form of slavery called vetti. It's slavery, but it's caste-based slavery. So that inspired him, and so he wanted to join it, but by the time he was up to it, the struggle was crushed. And it's because the leaders of the struggle, the communists, made a pact with the rich peasants and liquidated the struggle. And the poor peasants who struggled, fought for it, remained the same. So there was a dissent group that broke off from it. And they were inspired by the revolution in China, 1949, under Mao. And it's the Maoist struggle that he was attracted to, and he went on to found the Maoist movement that now India calls the most dangerous, internal security threat in India. He was one of the founders of that thing.
And that's an ongoing political struggle in India, the Naxalite.
Yeah, like
movement.
In the tribal areas, the big mining companies are trying to grab the land of tribals and kick them out of the forests. So he died, but his legacy still lives on, even though he was even expelled from it. So in that sense, he wanted to take his destination and his people's destination in his own hands, and
Was that something that you knew about when you were a girl? Did you understand that your uncle was this man, or was that kept from you because you were a child?
When I was 5 years old, he went underground. He disappeared from public life, went to live in the forests. And we learned about him only through the stories of my mother. She would say that your uncle went off to fight for the poor people. He lives in the jungle, and he has guns and all that stuff to fight the rich people, take their money and distribute among the poor people. That's the kind of story.
He's like Robin Hood.
Robinson.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I was very inspired by that.
Right. So I was one of the most chilling components of the book comes toward the end when you kind of, and I don't want to spoil exactly what happens, but you shed some context in the ways in which even this Maoist struggle that seems to be so idealistic was actually still riven with these caste tensions, and that your uncle, who was an untouchable man and had this really utopian ideal that all men are created equal, even he was betrayed by the people that he led, that the movement didn't really live up to that particular standard. And you close the book, you do this really charming thing of introducing yourself as a baby at the end of the book, and then you kind of close the book talking a little bit about yourself as an adult. And I'm curious whether you see yourself as having inherited your uncle's mantle of political activism and thinking about poverty and difference in class and how we do that in this country as opposed to India.
Oh yeah, definitely. My uncle was the most influential person in my life. And at 14, actually, I wanted to become a guerrilla like him. And I think it was 19 before I took up the rifle and went off to forest. I was arrested and tortured. So that never happened. And also, as I came to America, and there's like more resources to read for yourself, and I read, these movements by myself instead of getting indoctrinated. And I disagree with his political program and tactics before he was expelled from the party that he himself founded, and even after. But the main aim that, there should be equality, like equal access to everybody to all resources, that is still my ideal. And that problem is not limited to untouchables in India, but here as well, the race question. And so I don't see myself as like, oh, I have to be in India to fight against injustice, and I can do this very well here. And I am very passionate about, social struggles, anti-racist struggles, and I participate in them. And of course, I do. I still continue his legacy of, passion for social struggle.
We're going to open it up to questions, so if anyone has a question, but I have another one. So while you guys are gathering, your thoughts are making your way to the microphone, I want to ask you a little bit about the way in which you wrote this story, because in the section that Sujatha read, you could hear her reading sort of close observations and sort of scene setting. And in the New York Times review by Michiko Kakutani, she likened the work to Dickens. And I'm curious if you could explain to us how you learned these stories and how you approached writing them. You used dialogue and all of these things that you couldn't have known because you weren't there, you weren't even alive for so much of what you're writing about. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how you approached this family story and how you, the responsibility of writing something that accurately that you couldn't know firsthand.
I was able to write. I was able to even think of writing down something only because I left India and I came to America. It's because talking about caste is taboo. The upper caste people don't want to hear that there is still caste system in India. And lower caste people like myself, we're too ashamed to talk about it. We're too ashamed to inquire into it, why it happened like that. And I came here during the Iraq War demonstrations, and I saw at least some white people, if not all white people, being anti-racist, and not just being anti-racist, but passionately anti-racist. That could never have been imagined in India with Untouchables and caste Hindus. And so if people are okay with, people of other race, and it's not shame to be a different race, why can't I be like that? Why should I be ashamed of being born an untouchable? So that's when I started inquiring, why did I become an untouchable? And so I would talk to different people, but I thought the best source would be to call my mother and ask her, do you know why we became untouchables? And so she started telling the story of my ancestors, that is her great-grandfather. It's only since then that she knew the story of. And when she was telling the story, I was able to realize how they became untouchables. And so while I started this story as an inquiry into finding out caste, but their stories themselves I found very interesting. And she asked me to talk to my uncle, and my uncle led a very colorful, adventurous, charismatic life.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
That is your uncle, like the things that the stories that are relayed in this book, and they have this quality of, it's almost like the reader gets to be on the telephone with your mother and your uncles. Do you know what I mean? It's like
actually, a lot of this interviewing is done on the phone.
And you can feel that, and it's so charming. Yeah. I think we have a question here.
Yeah, sorry.
I understand that the Constitution of India reserves some degree of political strength to various castes by assured proportions in the legislature. It at least originally did. But is there a campaign by the government or otherwise to destroy the concept of caste, to say there are no differences, that people are not predestined? I mean, essentially, is there any progress towards acceptance of that as a concept, that the caste serves no real purpose, that it's a false concept?
Actually, I would disagree with you. Caste has a real purpose. It has a real material basis for it. Because there are certain classes of people, a very tiny minority of people benefit from perpetuating this system.
It has no biologic basis.
Yeah.
It serves economics.
Yeah, and the second thing is, yes, in 1950, India made untouchability a crime, but India has literally thousands of rules against caste discrimination, but none of them is ever respected. Just like here, there is no right of a black man that a white man is, is obliged to respect.
Our system would say equal justice. Is there a notion civically and endorsed publicly that these considerations just don't exist and ought to be ignored? Is there a popular support for that?
A popular support?
In India for doing away with the concept?
Yeah. I mean,
like politically, is there any kind of movement in the country to move past the system to sort of legally say this should not be the way it is? Or are you saying that there are laws, but the socially they're not enforced?
Yeah, so there's no point in fighting for more laws and more, these things, because the laws are simply not followed. So the only way to fight for it is to destroy the economic structures that necessitate the perpetuation of caste. For example, in rural India, landlords own caste and they need laborers to work for it, and they need laborers copiously and reliably all the time. So they don't want these people to go to city and get educated and become a doctor or a lawyer. They want to keep these people a reserve of people to work on the land. That is the material basis of caste. Caste is not like some evil idea or something. It has a root, economic root in it, And so unless those structures are demolished, there's really no hope for, abolition of caste in India.
Do we have another question?
Hi, I have two questions. One is, where did you learn to read? I didn't know that India educates untouchables. And the second is, how did you get to America? Like, how did you get the money?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Well, I say this, one time I said this to the interviewer, like, how did you become like one of these 2% of untouchables who escaped it? I think that historically, the green lights kept popping up just in time for us. Like when my great-grandmother was there, Canadian white missionaries came to India, and they wanted to convert people to Christianity, but caste Hindus didn't want to convert because they thought that they would lose their caste status. The only people left to convert were untouchables, and untouchables in droves took Christianity in India. And because they took Christianity, I mean, even otherwise they would have been, they were allowed into Christian schools, missionary schools to get education. They were allowed into missionary hospitals to get treatment for their children and the ailing. And that's a historical opportunity that happened just in time for my great-grandparents. And the second generation was independence. Immediately after independence, there's this hunky-dory feeling of like, oh, we defeated the foreigner and we're all one. And so some people like, believed it, and so people were treating other people like equally. And it is during that time that my mother and father were able to go to school and get education. And those institutions, government schools, persisted until my generation, and they're destroyed after that. Now untouchables have very little chance of advancement.
And how did you come to live in the United States?
So as I said, my grandparents missionary educated, and after that my parents in government colleges, and I also was able to go to school. And I went to this institution called IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. It's sort of like MIT. There, the trajectory of students over there is in final year, take GREs and TOEFL, get out of this country and go to the first world country. So I happened to be in that environment, and I just followed what other people were doing, and that's how I came here.
I think we had another question here.
You talked about the economic supports of the caste system. Is there a religious support to it? And I don't know if these thoughts are at all correct, but I'm thinking karma and reincarnation. Are there religious ties to the system, and are there differences among the different religious peoples in India in their approach to the caste system?
Oh, you know, people think that caste is associated with Hinduism. The basis for it is Hinduism has a creator. Lord Brahma was the creator. He created humans to fall into one of the 4 castes or as an outcast. So it says in Hindu text that the Brahmin comes from the forehead of the creator, the Lord Brahma. And the Kshatriyas, the warrior caste, comes from the shoulders, the arms of the creator. And the Vaishyas, the merchant caste, comes from, you know, and the service caste, potters, prostitutes, diggers, carpenters, they come from the legs of the Brahma. So it's also, the occupation is also associated with religious purity. So Brahmins are the purest people. And the untouchables come unsanctioned by Lord Brahma beneath his feet. And that's why they're the most impure. So Hinduism is basically a religious prop for caste system. It justifies caste system. It gives a religious sanction for caste system. I think, if I'm not incorrect, Confucianism is also a philosophy that's, you know, invented for social structuring of people. So, so it has religious purpose, but Indian society is what necessitates caste. So even other religious people come into India, they fall into one caste or the other. So Islam, Indian Muslims have caste. Muslims outside don't have caste, but Indian Muslims have caste. Christians don't have caste. They don't even know about caste. But in India, Christians have caste.
You had a question.
Yeah, so you said that to dismantle the caste system, you have to attack the economic structure that is propping it up.
Yeah.
So, but that's an idea. But to actually implement it, would you say that it should be through the political system, like affirmative action, or which has been there for some time, or through people's movement that are slowly coming up and gaining steam in India?
They interpret this to me.
So
I'm sorry, this light is...
I know, it is very bright.
Yeah.
The question is whether there is a political solution. We only have 2 minutes, so this is a tall order for you.
Yeah.
To answer whether there is a political solution to this problem via affirmative action, that's accurate, via affirmative action or some other program, or whether, I mean, what I hear you saying, and I think what I hear in the book, is that your thinking is a little more radical even than addressing this through affirmative action, that it's really, and what you're talking about is not just the breaking of caste, but the breaking of a larger capitalist system. But do you have any optimism, or do you have any sense that India is prepared to deal with this?
Yeah, I think India is roiling, more roiling than outsiders will realize. There is ferment of the workers, their ferment of peasants, and the students are really struggling under the current Modi regime. And India is producing 18-year-olds, like 1 million every month or year. One of those books mentions that. So there's going to be an army of unemployed in India, and that makes it a fertile ground for caste-based wars and discrimination and violence. And so I don't think any political party that wants to work within this structure, parliamentary structure, can bring down caste. And I think that the only way is to bring down the structures. And it may seem impossible, but things happen like that. In the world, it happened like that. In America, Civil War happened and destroyed slavery. And in French Revolution, the feudalism was destroyed and established the rule of the bourgeoisie, and it can happen.
I mean, they say that kings were divine until they no longer are.
Yes, exactly.
This was such a great conversation. I highly recommend Sujatha's book. It's a beautiful, beautiful family story. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have an amazing time today.